Hello there. Let's talk about mobile devices. I'm going to kick off this module with mobile peripherals. Now, if you're new to my series and this playlist, do me a favor and subscribe, please, so you don't miss an upload. But without any further ado, let's get into it. So first up, let's talk about integrated peripherals, the things that are built into your mobile devices. Now, most of these are going to pertain to a laptop, so we might as well have a picture of a laptop to point at things. First up, let's talk about the input peripherals that are built into these devices. So first up, you've got your touchpad or your trackpad. Now, if you're dealing with an Apple laptop, it's officially called a trackpad, and for normal PC laptops that are running Windows or Linux or whatever, they're touchpads. Either way, it's that little rectangular thing you put your finger on, move it around, and the cursor moves on the screen. I'm pretty sure you know how to use that. Then, you also get something called a track point. This little red nubbin on this laptop. It's not that common on consumer laptops, it's more of an enterprise laptop thing, and it's a bit of a holdover from the early days of laptops when we didn't have touchpads and there was a little bit of a ball that you rolled around there. Now, they are kind of convenient, because with smaller touchpads, you can't always get from one corner of the screen to the other corner of the screen in one finger motion. But with these little track points, you just push them in the direction, sort of like a little joystick, and they move around the cursor until it reaches the point you want it. And that can be a bit easier to do certain things. Believe me, I've had laptops with both. And honestly, when I have to use the touchpad and the track point, I do personally prefer a dedicated mouse, but I jump between the two depending on what I'm doing. So it's nice to have that option on enterprise laptops. And then you get touchscreens. Now, touchscreens are more likely on tablets and phones, but you do get some laptops that do have touchscreens. Obviously, if you poke it and nothing happens, either you're missing a driver or it's not a touchscreen. Please wipe that fingerprint off the screen now. Now, if you do have a touchscreen, it might come with a stylus or a pen-like device, also referred to as a digitizer, that allows a more natural form of writing or drawing on a touchscreen. Then you also get your microphone and webcam. I talk about them together because usually they are there at the top of the screen, where a couple of the holes around the webcam are probably the microphone. And obviously there's a little webcam looking at you, looking at it, looking at you. Then you get the keyboard, which I really hope you can find without my arrow, but there it is if you didn't. And your laptops usually have physical keyboards, whereas your touchscreen devices like phones and tablets usually rely on an on-screen keyboard. But you can obviously have an on-screen keyboard in your laptop as well. Depends on what your operating system supports as far as accessibility features are concerned. And then you'll also get your fingerprint scanners. These, again, are more the preserve of enterprise laptops. Not the kind of thing you usually find on a consumer laptop, but there's a fingerprint scanner on this laptop. Older ones are usually a little rectangular thing you swipe your finger over. Newer laptops might just require you to put your finger over a little square or circle, probably even the power button, to actually scan your fingerprint. Then, as far as integrated output peripherals are concerned, most devices usually have a speaker and a display for you to look at. Now, technically, your touchscreen is a membrane that goes over your display unit that reacts to your touch in some way. So you can argue the touchscreen element is input, whereas the display behind it that you're looking at, and you can see through the touchscreen, is actually the thing you're seeing, and is considered an output device. But thankfully, if you are not happy with the integrated peripherals, mobile devices do have ports for you to connect things to. Laptops, thankfully, are quite port-rich as far as mobile devices are concerned. You'll usually have some sort of video output. On modern laptops, it'll probably be DisplayPort, Mini DisplayPort, or HDMI, maybe even a Thunderbolt connection. You might want to go back and check out a previous video where I ran through some of these connector types. On older laptops, you might have DVI, heaven help you if you do, or VGA, which at least is still kind of useful, despite being a legacy connector. Then you'll usually get at least one USB Type A connector still, although that is starting to change a little bit lately, with more and more laptops coming out with only USB Type-C. But thankfully, with most laptops, you usually have a healthy mixture. Please note, if you're dealing with an Apple device, Apple is always the special exception here. You'll also usually have 3.5mm auxiliary audio jacks to plug headphones and microphones into if that's how they connect. Some laptops you might have one for a headphone and another one for a microphone in. Or you could have a shared function one where both microphone and audio output go through the same 3.5mm auxiliary jack connector. Then you can also have an RJ45 connector for a network cable. This is starting to become a little bit of a maybe thing. It first started with the ultra-thin, ultrabook style laptops where the RJ45 connector just added a little bit too much thickness and bulk to the body of the laptop. But now that's trending out to even your average laptop sizes and thicknesses where they're just ditching the RJ45 connector because generally a lot of people don't ever connect a network cable to it. They rely exclusively on the laptop's Wi-Fi capabilities. And usually laptops also do give you some sort of memory card slot. More often than not, it'll either be SD cards or micro SD card slots. Now, if you do have any other connection options on your laptop, cool, enjoy. Take advantage of it. But that's generally what you find on most modern laptops. With your phones and tablets, however, you don't get as much physical connectivity options. You will either have a micro USB-B connection, a USB Type-C connection, or a Lightning connection on older iPhones. And if you're lucky, you might still have a 3.5mm auxiliary audio jack to plug headphones into. But on smartphones and tablets now, this is becoming another one of those maybe you have it, maybe you don't. And this is mainly because with a lot of phones and tablets nowadays, we rely quite a bit on Bluetooth for peripheral connectivity. So that's the way it goes. Now you also get something pretty interesting for your mobile devices as far as connectivity is concerned. And these are docking stations and port replicators. With a docking station, this is again something you would find for enterprise laptops, not really for consumer laptops. And the idea of these are you would position them at the desk and plug in your monitor, your big keyboard, your mouse. Basically your normal desktop peripherals get plugged into the docking station. The interfaces would probably be on the back side of this one. And then you come along and you plop your laptop on top. On the bottom side of your laptop, there would probably be two holes for those plastic guide rods to go into, and then there's a special connector that plugs straight into the motherboard. This can provide peripheral connectivity to the laptop straight into the motherboard. And often these things can also charge the laptop. So if this is at your desk in your workplace, you can just mosey on in, take your laptop out the bag, plop it on that thing, and boom, your laptop is basically a portable desktop. And then if you need to go and attend a meeting in a boardroom or something like that, you pick your laptop up. Well, if you've got to press this little eject button there, and on the way you go. Your laptop's now a laptop. So it's a really, really cool thing. I just hope for your sake the employer actually is prepared to spend a little bit extra on this nice, very good quality of life accessory. If not, well, you do get port replicators. Now with port replicators, they usually have a specialized USB connection that would plug into the laptop, possibly needing a driver installation to be done as well. And it also needs its own dedicated power to run this thing. But what it'll do is it'll provide additional interfaces, such as additional USB, extra headphone jacks, network cable, and some digital video output here, HDMI and display ports in this case. The downside is you're still going to have a mess of cables and wires, and this thing will not charge your laptop, I'm afraid. But still, at least you can get something like a docking station without having to go and get a docking station. You just have to pull the laptop and the charging cable for the laptop out of the bag and connect those up and rock and roll with them. But don't worry, your phones and tablets aren't abandoned. You do get docking stations for them. The main purpose for phone and tablet docking stations is so you can put them there and charge them up. But you can also possibly have some Bluetooth pairing or even cable connections and be able to do audio playback through them. So you could listen to music, watch something on the screen, or even have a conference call if this device supports that. And courtesy of wireless charging and Bluetooth connectivity, it's often a case of just place the device there and everything happens. No need to actually plug anything in or unplug anything when you're done. So pretty cool and convenient, and probably something nice to have by your front door. But wireless connectivity is the main thing for mobile devices, whether it be laptops, phones, or tablets. So let's start out with Wi-Fi. So you'll find your laptops, your phones, and your tablets all equally use Wi-Fi as much as each other. However, laptops do treat wireless in an interesting way. If a laptop does have both a wired connection with an RJ45 connection to an Ethernet cable and an Ethernet connection at the same time, laptops will usually favor the wired connection, as Ethernet cables are faster generally, more stable, and often give you closer to true bandwidth than a wireless connection will. Phones and tablets, however, don't have that RJ45 connection, but they will favor Wi-Fi over a cellular connection if both are available. Mainly because in most countries around the world, Wi-Fi based internet is always cheaper than your cellular service providers are. And something worth knowing about for both laptops and phones and tabs is that they have an airplane or a flight mode where you quickly tap that thing and it turns off all forms of wireless connection so that your phone can't be a distraction while a plane is taking off or landing. In airplane mode, you usually can turn your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth back on, but if the device has a cellular connection, it will remain off until you turn off the airplane or flight mode. Keep that in the back of your mind for troubleshooting advice. Users often accidentally trigger that by accident and not realize it and wonder why they can't connect. Speaking of cellular though, let's talk about cellular. This is something you're more likely to see on your phones because, let's be honest, without a SIM card and a cellular network connection, a smartphone won't really be a smartphone. It'll just be a smart. And laptops and tablets might have a cellular connection. Tablets depends on the model you buy, but a tablet can be perfectly usable in a Wi-Fi only state. Laptops, yeah, if it's got a built-in cellular modem and it just needs a SIM card, off you go. But speaking of those SIM cards, you get your traditional SIM card and you get an eSIM or an electronic or embedded SIM, depending on which definition you like. The cool thing about an eSIM is you don't have to stick a SIM card in that device. The details from a SIM card can be delivered to the device either by a carrier or by doing an eSIM cloning feature, which can then allow the device to connect to the cellular network, use your mobile identity and your billing, and go online. It's a pretty cool feature. But either way, you do need that SIM card because it does carry your mobile identity, which your provider needs to know who you are, how to direct your calls to you, and obviously, because they're in this business to make money, to charge you accordingly. But thankfully, you do get something for what they charge you, and that is your cellular technologies that support internet connectivity and modern mobile device browsing. Generally, you want to be rocking at least 3G, maybe 4G, and 5G if you can. Now, this whole number G thing is just an indicator of the cellular generation technologies. And it's meant to make it easier for a consumer to recognize, especially when a new generation is coming out, whether a device is capable of the newer, cooler stuff or whatever the current is. So I remember when 4G first came out, it was a selling point for phones to be the 4G model. And same when 5G came out. It was a selling point for a phone to be a 5G model as opposed to a 4G model. But what does it actually really mean? Now, if you're going to get into the nitty-gritty details because you're going to look at working at a cell provider, well, there are better courses for that. But for a simple takeaway, this is what it basically means. Speed. When you're looking at 3G-based technologies, you're looking at effectively up to 7.2 megabits per second. Don't forget that 0.2, eh? It makes a difference. Or at least it did back then. When you're looking at 4G, you've got speeds of up to 1 gigabit per second according to the documentation and standards, but realistically you'll probably see around about 300 megabits per second in the real world. And then with 5G, again, documentation and standards promise up to 10 gigabits per second, and depending on how the cell provider implements their 5G network, you can actually get pretty close to that. The only thing I do warn you about is if you have any sort of prepaid data, or a cap on your data plan, you can probably burn through your data very quickly when you're going at 10 gigabits per second versus a couple hundred megabits per second. So just keep an eye on what you're doing. But at least it does provide the ability to be a roaming nomadic internet user, just at a slightly higher price. Now, another interesting technology that we have with our mobile devices is tethering and hotspotting. The idea of tethering is being able to share a smartphone's cellular data connection with other devices like laptops, tablets, etc., and get them onto the internet. This can usually be done by USB, Bluetooth, or Wi-Fi, and it's technically considered hotspotting when you do this tethering through Wi-Fi. I use this quite a lot when I actually want an internet connection while I'm out and about for my laptop. Turning my phone into a portable hotspot basically makes my phone act like both a phone and its cellular connection to the internet, but it also uses its Wi-Fi transceiver to act as a wireless access point. So it's pretty cool. But speaking of Bluetooth, we've been mentioning quite a bit and we haven't really given it enough attention. So Bluetooth is a short-range personal area network communications technology. It was originally developed to be a universal connection technology that allows a variety of different types of devices to connect together wirelessly without the need of some specialized infrastructure or protocols. So the way it works is usually you get two Bluetooth devices to pair with one another, and that will allow them to exchange varying types of data once that pairing has been done and the appropriate approval has been given. But it does require that both devices have something called the same Bluetooth profile. A Bluetooth profile for Bluetooth is sort of like a protocol for normal networking. Like, for example, if you want to look at a website, there needs to be a web server that allows people to send requests to it on HTTP, and you need a web browser that allows you to generate HTTP requests and receive the HTTP responses. If you don't have a browser, and the web server doesn't have the right web service on it, you ain't doing much there. So, similar principle here for the Bluetooth. You get things like the headset profile, which is normally used for Bluetooth headphones or earphones. You get the hands-free profile, which is usually meant for a call device, whether it be in a car or one that you stick in your ear. You also have the file transfer profile, which is used to obviously send files to one another through Bluetooth. And there are so many more. But pairing is required before data transfer is allowed. It's a little bit of a simple but kind of effective security mechanism. Please do not trust the pairing though to keep you safe from a very determined and skilled hacker. It is possible to hijack a Bluetooth connection. It is literally called bluejacking. And then, a fairly recent entry as far as wireless communication is concerned is NFC, or near-field communication. This is a very short-range wireless communication protocol. We're talking at distances of no more than 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. Very, very close proximity. And it actually uses the same frequency that RFID cards use, 13.56 megahertz, which means you can use NFC devices as an alternative for RFID access cards if you are able to do this in the workplace. Pretty cool. Usually the way most people encounter and experience NFC is for mobile payment solutions where you're tapping and paying for your goods or services using your phone instead of your bank card, which is pretty cool. But that was a decent introduction to mobile devices, their peripherals, and interesting connectivity options. I hope you found that helpful, useful, and informative. And if you believe that this would be helpful, useful, or informative for anybody else, please don't be afraid to share this video with them. As always though, I'd like to say thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next video.